And I felt so alone. I felt like my origin was gone because my parents were gone. And so many of the women in my bloodline had children. I come from a long line of strong Black mothers, but they always had their children to pursue life for. They always worked so hard for their children, and I'm a byproduct of that. But I didn't have that, so I felt so lost. I don't have my origin, and I don't have a legacy behind me, and why am I here? So I walked through the pandemic where we were all dealing with that. And I woke up every day wondering, what is my purpose? I feel so alone. I feel so purposeless. Why am I here? Why am I here, God? And the thing is that I had started writing. I wrote a book when I dealt with my first breakup and we were engaged, and that's his own story. And I remember being in church and there was a minister, and it was a divine moment where he called me to the front and he gave me a word. He says, you will comfort others with the comfort you've been comforted with. But that ended up becoming my first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak, Recovering from Misguided Love.
Who's ready for some Girl Talk?
Welcome to Girl Talk. I'm Nicole D. Miller, author, blogger, speaker, hybrid book publisher, and your host. At Girl Talk, we are a safe space for female leaders to engage in healing and edifying conversation. This is your Me Too empathetic corner, where we have authentic and transformative dialogue designed to uplift and connect high-achieving women like you. Are you looking for a safe space to cultivate sisterhood with other like-minded female bosses? Leave your cape at the door and join the conversation. Welcome back to Girl Talk. Today, we're continuing an intimate conversation, Dealing with Grief at the Holidays, Part 3. I'm your host, Nicole D. Miller. The holidays can be a joyous season, but for many of us, they also bring up profound feelings of loss, heartache, and longing, particularly when a loved one has recently passed. But whether it's the grief of losing a loved one, the pain of a breakup, or navigating life after divorce, this episode holds space for all of it. Joined by our incredible guests, Jamia Lewis, Butter Khan, Miss Gloria Terry, and Dr. Shamara J. Hutchins, we'll hear raw, honest stories of heartbreak and resilience. We're opening up about our personal journeys, sharing tools to help you face your pain, and offering words of hope that remind us we're never alone. You can reach out to any one of our guests on their platforms by viewing their contact information in the show notes. If for some reason you missed our prior conversations on this topic, feel free to run those back. Get ready for an episode filled with empathy, courage, and the unwavering strength that comes from community. Grab your favorite beverage, sit back, relax, and join the conversation.
But these people that didn't even know me, we literally had people walk the embassy handing things like a customer gave me a gift of money. I know I'm supposed to take it, but I ain't a post office anymore, so I can't do it, y'all. She used to come in all the time and they would see pictures of my children. She was just like, your kids need this. Happy Merry Christmas. Don't take me, thank God. Don't open it. If you start crying, I'm going to run like we'd never met you. And of course I cried it away. But
She gave you like $500. Why? Who are you? Who am I?
I didn't tell you I needed this. I'm not, some type of sob story and donation plate. Like, but she did this for me, and he was like, these are the things that, God did for you. You have to start saying these things. I was wondering why I'm at court every day. But the outcome of it is everything was working in my favor. Yes, I was tired. Yes, I was missing work. Yes, I was done. Like, I'm in this by myself and I'm watching my children go through this. But everything continued to work in my favor. And so, in one side, yes, my faith was tested until I had to really receive what was happening to me to understand these things are working out in my favor the way that God planned them out to be. It's not all bad, even though it looks ugly. And so I had to turn her around. So then my faith got stronger. And now you can't tell me nothing, child. Because I said, your way I receive in my space that you are sitting in today. No PPP, no grants, no loans. I got denied for everything. No man, no sugar daddy. Nobody's stepping up to say, here, let me help you do this. But God placed certain people in my way that I had to pay for. But I'm still here by the grace of God with the beautiful space that I can do this. You know, so it's like, this is meant for you. So yeah, it's a struggle. I still go home across the town. It's like, oh, shit, how am I going to pay this? And like, you know, but I wake up and it's another year. So those things, instead of saying, this is hard, this is a struggle. Now I wake up and say, well, God said I was supposed to be here. I still have purpose. So I'm blessed to have it. So now you can't tell me on a slow day, okay, she'll not no appointments. All right, well, I guess I'll go home and take a nap. Instead of saying, oh my God, what am I going to do? This is terrible. I'm not doing this right. And I'm just, you know, so stressed and worried. And I go back to my bad habits of grieving. But now I'm turning it around to receiving. And that's how it affects my face. So I'm going to stop now because I feel my throat getting lumpy. It's coming. It's coming. I'm getting better. But that is definitely how it affects my grieving, because now, before I felt so broken, so stressed, so worried, and I was always asking why. Now I'm trying to understand, like, oh, why not? Why not me? Because if I could look at you and say how beautiful you are and how wonderful of a woman you are and how amazing and talented you are, why can't I look at myself and say that? So if I can say that to you or to myself, why can't I look at you and say, well, why am I going through this? Well, you are too. So why not me too? But we're here to share it, right? And that's why it's beautiful one to hear has this panel where she share these things, because it's meant for us to go through this. It's everything that they go through. It isn't always just for us.
I have a poem I would like to share that touches on this. And it's funny hearing y'all read y'all's poetry earlier. I wasn't even thinking about this. You'll hear, you'll see the connection. But it's called Even When we wonder how God could allow us to hurt in this way. Even when we doubt his goodness and can't find the words to pray. Even when we find ourselves in seasons we never thought we'd be. Even when our hearts are overwhelmed by unrelenting grief. Even when what we feel is shared by no one else. Even when we're struggling and don't know how to ask for help. Even when we cry out to him because we want a different path. Even when there are no answers to all the questions that we've asked. Even when we shake our fist towards heaven for the unfairness of it all. God, our lovely Father, he can take it all. And thank you. That poem, I think I wrote it in 2018. Like, oh, yeah. It's, wow. I am a very empathetic person. So I tend to take on, like, if other people are going through and dealing with things, then I feel some measure of that also. So earlier that year with Nicole's mom, that year I had also lost a cousin, and just another friend of mine at that time. Her mom was like, we knew that she was approaching. I don't think she was in hospice care at the time, but we knew it was close. And so having been surrounded by those things, and at the time I was not working full time, so I had quit my job. That's a different story for a day. I just was in a very heavy place emotionally, and it was at a place where I'm like, Lord, I ain't even talking to you. Like, I'm not even talking to you right now. You know, like that's where we are. You know, so a lot of times, and I didn't think about this earlier when you asked the question, but just in terms of a response to grief, what does that usually look like? And you kind of touched on this earlier as well, just like how things come out of you creatively when you are going through. And that's how it is for me often. So like a lot of times my grief I work through that creatively. So it might be writing something, it might be anything. A lot of times it's a song or something like that. So so in this particular case, that's just where I was, and just finding comfort in the fact that even in the midst of my questions and my anger and like feeling like this is unfair, I don't know why you got me here, even in the midst of all of that, knowing, and as you mentioned earlier, I feel like I got to call you Miss Sister Terry.
But as you were saying earlier, like he can take it all.
He is able to withstand all of, whatever we're throwing at him in response to whatever grievous situation that we're dealing with. And so that phrase of, like, Lord, okay, I just started talking to you again. I've said that a number of times to him. Just even recently, it's like, okay, so that my aunt passed later on that year. Just a lot of big things just felt like one more thing. And I think to another point that was mentioned earlier, we reach for him. We reach for God in ways that we would not when we are hurt. Yeah. Like the way that I picture that as like when there's a baby that might be refusing to be, and all they want is to be held and rocked, and they might be fighting you on that, but ultimately that's what it is that they need. That's what's going to be able to bring comfort. And I just see our relationships with God like that. A couple of other things that I'll add to that, just in terms of faith wise. I think one of the things that comes with age is like you start to see like, okay, I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to have all the answers. I don't know. Even though sometimes that is the response that you have. And I'll just say what those particular lyrics are, just because it points to this question of like, what does that do with our faith? And then one more story. Okay, so but it's the lyrics go, no pretending cannot be denied. Life is overwhelming sometimes. Don't know what each day will bring. Gotta have something to cling to when my faith is low and it seems that I can't take another thing. Still, I know I'm not alone. I gather with my friends who know how to call on God and know He's good, and that He'll do just what He said He would. I link arms with my sisters to go before our God in truth. And for me, it's really been a communal thing. Like, I was been friends like Nicole and some of our other close friends that had helped me hold on to faith when I did not want to keep them. And I guess the last thing that I'll say is like, He will come see about you. He will. I probably didn't like cry for real about my aunt. Like I cried, of course, but like the way that I needed to cry, that didn't come for months later, like almost like eight or 9 months later. So we're talking, it was like January, February of the next year. And that particular morning, I had gotten up for the third morning in a row at like 3-something in the morning. That last morning that I got up, I woke up like, okay, why? Let me try to write. Like, I guess maybe I need to try to journal or something. And so when I did, like as soon as I put pen to paper, like just tears, just crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. But it was cathartic, like it was something that needed to happen. And I guess I just had that holding at the end. I hadn't released it yet. That morning, I had listened to this podcast called Truth Table. They were like reading through the Bible. The scripture that they were talking about Job and how he was able to, vent his emotions and things like that, and how there's space for us to do that. Same morning, on a YouVersion, the scripture today was, "Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted." But it was like, the way that I say it is like, even in my resistance or in my anger, however I was feeling about the Lord, like He still came to see about me. Like His comfort was so real to me that morning.
Thank you, Junior. So I'm going to share, and then we're going to hear from the audience. So when I think about how my relationship got hit when my mom transitioned, I know Dr. Shamara touched on it. Trust was broken. Before that experience, I had such an intimate experience with the divine. Like, it was like we were in the same bed and we're connected and we are one. And when that happened, I was like, don't even come at me. You know, it was just like, who are you? It felt like I had this spiritual experience as a teenager and my arms were wide open. So, you know, when you first fall in love, it's that honeymoon, like, oh, everything's just great and flowery and roses. And when that happened, it was just like, I felt like he raked over my heart with a rake. Like, I had my heart held out to you and you just slashed it. And I felt so alone. I felt like my origin was gone because my parents were gone. And so many of the women in my bloodline had children. I come from a long line of strong Black mothers, but they always had their children to pursue light for. They always were so hard for their children, and I'm a byproduct of that, but I didn't have that, so I felt so lost. I don't have my origin, and I don't have a legacy behind me, and why am I here? So I walked through the pandemic where we were all dealing with that, and I woke up every day wondering, what is my purpose? I feel so alone. I feel so purposeless. Why am I here? Why am I here, Dappet? And the thing is that I had started writing. I wrote a book when I dealt with my first breakup and we were engaged, and that's his own story. And I remember being in church and there was a minister and there was a divine moment where he called me to the front and he gave me a word. He says, you will comfort others with the comfort you've been comforted with. And at the time, it was such an encouragement because I was in grief, brokenhearted. This was my future. And this man cheated on me and dogged me. And we were together for 4 years, and it took me 4 years to get over that. But that ended up becoming my first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak, Recovering from Misguided Love. So God used that, and that is the book that has now comforted others, right? So I wrote, and I used to vlog when my mom transitioned. I couldn't write anymore because it was intimacy of God, and I couldn't be intimate with him because you just raked over my heart. How can I get intimate with you? So it took me 3 years to write it in. I couldn't write for 3 years because of grief, because it was my gift was wound up in my relationship with God. It was during the pandemic, and one of my best friends was there, and I really had nothing to do. Like, my bookkeeping business was slow. I really didn't have a lot going on. And so I just had this very casual thought, like, maybe I'll just pick up these stories that I had started years ago. Maybe I'll just write again. And it was like the floodgates came out. And I know Julianne shared this and Butter shared this. And a lot of us are creatives in the space. And so you guys will understand we can channel that stuff into art, into creativity. And all of a sudden I had a whole book. And it was like God was just like, come on, this is what I've been calling you to. This is your purpose. And I ended up publishing Stories for the Urban Soul. And finally, I was ready to let go of my mindset of being this businesswoman, because I was scared of that to be an artist. I'm like, who makes money writing? Anyways, so clearly I'm going to. But, you know, I finally got that book out, and it was like, okay, Lord, he wouldn't let her go. And it was like, let me just see what's on the other side of these. Let me just see. And that is when everything changed for me. When I got serious, and I was like, I need to sing a song on the side of this. And look at this. You guys, the B-side is this. When you say yes to purpose and you push through those dark, dark days when you feel so alone and you don't know what to do, do not give up, because the next day after, there is a purpose and a plan on the other side. And it is just what Butter said, for somebody else. And I love what you said when you said, why not me? Everybody is going through something. Why not me? So, sorry. I just wanted to share, because now my books are my channel of releasing hurt and brokenness and grief, because I have experienced restoration and healing and love in the midst of the hard days. It's still going to be hard as life, but we do not grieve without hope. That is the word that I keep hearing. We grieve, but we don't grieve as the world. We grieve with hope. We grieve with sisterhood. We grieve with fellowship and love. So it doesn't take away the hard parts of this life, but we don't have to be alone while we're experiencing it. And you can come out on the other side with the story to encourage somebody else, just as Butter shared.
We closed out this discussion with me sharing my personal experience of loss, and I hope you took comfort in hearing everyone's stories of dealing with grief at the holidays. I'm thankful that Butter reminded us sometimes our grief isn't just about us. It's about shaping a testimony that can encourage someone else. She also said, it's not all bad, even though it looks ugly. Selah. That means that even amidst pain, beauty and purpose can still be uncovered. Several of us shared about the healing power of storytelling and creativity, and Jamia demonstrated this with her poem, Even When. The authenticity in her words served as a balm to her weary heart. Moments like these exemplify how storytelling, whether through poetry or personal narratives, can connect us all and provide solace and shared understanding. In case you didn't catch it, faith remained a vital thread woven throughout this conversation. Butter's declaration, if I'm here another day, that means I still have purpose, is an example that resonated deeply. In some ways, going through loss can provide even more purpose when we use our pain to help others. I experienced this with the testimony of my first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak. In this conversation, I also shared that one of the key messages on my heart was 1 Thessalonians 4:13, which reminds us that, as believers, we do not grieve without hope. This verse is a good one to stand on because, even in sorrow, there is the promise of comfort and healing. To those walking through grief this season, my encouragement is this: lean into storytelling, creativity, faith, and connection with others. Often we feel isolated by our emotions and hardships. I personally have struggled with the holidays since my grandmother transitioned in 2006. In 2018, everything got worse. But through Girl Talk, now I know, without a doubt, I'm not the only one. I think Butter said it best. Instead of asking, why me? Try asking, why not me? Everyone is going through something. Even Christ warns us that we will go through trials and tribulations. But his response is, be encouraged. Because he has overcome the world, we will too. John 16:33. Sis, know that you're not alone. And as this episode gently affirms, there's always purpose and light to be found on the other side of our hardships. Now that we've covered grief, let's talk about our health. Too many times, women are being superheroes to the world. Our jobs, our families, our communities. Unfortunately, our capes are wearing thin because we're neglecting our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. In this next conversation, Taking Care of Us, we'll hear from some amazing health gurus who can give us practical tips to make sure we are tending to us before we tend to someone else. If you're a woman always thinking about others before themselves, well, this one is especially for you. And remember, I attract amazing women doing amazing things. So guess what, sis? That means you're amazing. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. To continue the conversation, join our Girl Talk community by following @GirlTalkCLE on Instagram and Facebook.com/HTOHB, where you can join the Girl Talk Facebook group. You can follow me personally on Instagram @HTOHB, on Facebook.com/HTOHB, and at YouTube.com /@HTOHB. Feel free to reach out via email info@indiemillerpublishing.com. If you're a writer who wants to take the next steps into becoming a published author, you can book a one-on-one consultation at indiemiller.pub. Just let me know you heard about my publishing house through Girl Talk, and I'll give you a 50% discount on our one-on-one. If you'd like weekly inspirational nuggets, you can subscribe to my blog and monthly newsletter at NicoleDmiller.com, where you can learn more about me and my writings.